If you think you know what betrayal looks like, this isn't it. This is worse. Betrayal is supposed to come from a stranger, from someone who never loved you in the first place. This one came from my own brother and sister, the two people who were supposed to have my back for my entire life. I'm 33. Before all of this started, I had a normal life, a small apartment, a job as an administrative assistant at a logistics company, a used Honda I'd paid off myself. Nothing special. I wasn't trying to build some big life. I just wanted things to be steady. My parents died when I was 29. A car accident, both of them at once, on a Tuesday, on their way back from my grandmother's house. I still can't drive past that intersection without my hands going cold on the wheel. Grandma Joan practically raised me during summers. When I was a kid, my parents both worked long hours, and I'd spend June through August at her house, 2 towns over, sleeping in the same tiny guest room with the flowered wallpaper, eating her burnt toast because she refused to admit her toaster ran hot. She used to say I was her person. Out of 3 grandkids, I was the one who called her every Sunday without being asked. After my parents died, it was just me, my older brother Michael, my younger sister Ashley, and Grandma Joan. She was already sick by then, heart failure, and the beginning of dementia that came and went depending on the day. Someone had to take care of her. I was the only one who said yes. Michael said he had his career to think about. He's a regional manager, always somewhere between 2 cities. Ashley said she had her own kids, her own house, her own life, and honestly, I get it. I do. But somebody had to be there. Grandma Joan couldn't be alone, not for 1 more week. There was a day early on when she looked right at me and asked when my mother, her daughter, was coming to visit. I had to explain gently that my mom had passed. She cried like she was hearing it for the first time, because, in a way, for her, she was. Then 20 minutes later she asked again. I explained it again. That happened 4 more times, that same afternoon. So I quit my job. I sold my car, the one I'd paid off myself, the first big thing I'd ever owned outright. And I moved into her apartment. I slept on her couch for 11 months. I set an alarm for 2 a.m. and 4 a.m. every single night, because that's when she needed help getting up, or her medication, or just someone to sit with her when the confusion got bad and she didn't know where she was. My days had a shape to them by month. 6 a.m., her pills with breakfast. 9 a.m., the home health aide, Dolores, would come for 3 hours so I could grocery shop or nap on the floor of the pharmacy waiting room, because even that felt like more rest than the couch. Noon, lunch, and her physical therapy exercises. 2 p.m., a nap for both of us if we were lucky. Then evening, dinner, television, bed by 9, and the 2 a.m. alarm waiting on the other side of a few hours of sleep that never felt like enough. And here's the part that still makes my stomach turn. My brother and sister called me the selfish one. You just want her all to yourself. That's what Ashley said to me over the phone while I was literally holding a damp washcloth to Grandma's forehead. She should be in a nursing home. You're being dramatic. I didn't even respond to that one. I just hung up and cried in the bathroom for 10 minutes, quietly, so Grandma wouldn't hear. I remember one night in particular, maybe month 4. She'd had a bad episode, didn't know where she was, kept asking for her late husband, my grandfather, who'd been dead for 11 years. She got agitated, tried to get out of bed to go find him, and I had to physically stop her from falling, both of us crying, me at 3 a.m. in a t-shirt I'd been wearing for 2 days, because I hadn't had time to do laundry. I called Michael afterward. It was almost 4 a.m. He picked up on the 4th ring, groggy, annoyed. I just needed to hear another adult voice, I think. I told him what happened. He said, That sounds really hard. And then, within the same breath, anyway, I've got an early flight. I should sleep. He hung up before I could say anything else. I sat on the edge of her bed after that call, in the dark, and just listened to her breathe until the sun came up. Every time I asked them for money, not for me, for her medication, for the home health aide I hired for a few hours a week just so I could shower and sleep, they'd twist it. You're exploiting her. You're just trying to get ahead of the inheritance. I remember Michael actually said the word stealing to me over text. Stealing, while I was down to $1,100 in my savings account and eating cereal for dinner 3 nights a week so Grandma could have her name brand medication instead of the generic. I texted him back, "Are you fucking serious right now?" He never responded. He just sent a laughing emoji 2 days later on an unrelated group text, like nothing had happened. I loved her. That's the thing nobody wants to hear in this story, because it makes the rest of it uglier. I loved her, and I did it because I loved her, not because I wanted anything from her. There's a night I think about a lot. Maybe month 7. She was having a good day, clear-headed, funny, herself. We sat on her couch and watched an old black and white movie she loved, and halfway through, she just reached over and took my hand and said, "I don't know what I'd do without you, sweetheart." I mean that. I remember thinking, in that exact moment, that whatever this cost me, it was worth it. I still believe that part. I just didn't know yet what it was actually going to cost. She died in March, 2 in the morning. Of course it was 2 in the morning. That was our time. Our little joke toward the end. The ghost shift, she called it. I was holding her hand. Neither of my siblings were there. Michael was traveling for work. Ashley said she couldn't handle it emotionally. I planned the funeral almost entirely by myself. I picked the flowers. I wrote the obituary at midnight at her kitchen table, the same table where I'd fed her soup 100 times that year. The week after the funeral, I started packing up her apartment alone because nobody offered to help and I didn't think to ask. I found her reading glasses on the nightstand, still folded the way she always left them. I found a half-finished crossword from the week before she died. I sat on her bedroom floor for almost an hour holding that crossword puzzle before I could make myself keep packing. And then, the funeral wasn't even a week over, and something in my brother and sister just switched. Suddenly they were calling constantly. Suddenly they were so involved. Suddenly there were meetings with a lawyer that I wasn't invited to. I found out about the first one because I saw it on Ashley's Instagram story. A photo of coffee cups on a conference table, captioned, "Handling Family Business." I texted her, "What meeting?" She left me on read for 6 hours. When she finally responded, it was, "We're just signing some things on Grandma's behalf. Don't worry about it. You're too emotional for this part anyway." Too emotional. I'd changed that woman's sheets in the middle of the night for 11 months, and now I was too emotional to sit at a table. I tried once more, in person. I drove to Michael's place, unannounced, something I never did, because I'd found out through a cousin that there'd been a second meeting, this one with an actual estate attorney, and nobody had called me. Michael answered the door in sweatpants, looked genuinely surprised to see me, like I'd violated some unspoken rule by just showing up. "We didn't want to stress you out," he said, standing in the doorway, not inviting me in. "You're grieving. We're handling the logistics so you don't have to." "I don't need you to protect me from logistics," I said. "I need you to include me." He just sort of shrugged, like the conversation was already over in his head. They kept doing it, meeting after meeting, always somewhere I didn't need to be. When I pushed, when I actually stood in Michael's kitchen and said, "I want to see the will. I want to be part of this," he looked at me like I'd asked him for something obscene. You don't understand the legal stuff, okay? Just let us handle it. It's easier this way? Easier for who, Michael? Because it sure as hell wasn't easier for me. It took me almost 2 months to get an actual copy of the will, 2 months of calling the attorney's office, of being told the file was still being processed, of Ashley telling me to stop making this weird. When it finally came in the mail, my hands were shaking so bad, I tore the envelope wrong on the first try. I read it standing up in my kitchen. Then I sat down on the floor and read it again, because I thought maybe I'd misunderstood. The will had been amended 19 days before Grandma died. 19 days. The house, her savings, almost everything, split between Michael and Ashley. What I got was a symbolic thing, her wedding ring, and $800. $800. After 11 months of my life. I said it out loud, alone, in my kitchen, to nobody. This is such bullshit. Just that. Nobody heard it but me, and somehow, that made it worse, saying it into an empty room. I want to tell you I confronted them immediately. I didn't. I want to tell you I was strong right away. I wasn't. I fell apart. I lost the part-time job I'd picked up after Grandma died because I couldn't stop crying at my desk, and my manager finally just let me go. Gently, but he let me go. I burned through what little savings I had left. I stopped answering calls from extended family because I found out, slowly in pieces from a cousin who still talked to me, that Michael and Ashley had been telling everyone I'd used Grandma, that I'd isolated her, that I'd worked on her for money. I remember standing in a grocery store, maybe 7 months after she died, staring at a shelf of the same medication brand I used to buy her, and just having to leave my cart in the aisle and walk out to my car. I sat there for 20 minutes before I could drive. For months, I actually started to believe I might have deserved it. I stopped going to the one friend group I still had left from college. I remember my friend Priya texted me to grab coffee, and I just stared at the message for 2 days before typing back, maybe next week, and never following up. It wasn't about her. It was that I genuinely didn't trust my own read on people anymore. If I could be that wrong about my own siblings, what else was I wrong about? I want to be honest about that part, because it's the part people skip in these stories. I sat in my apartment, the small one I'd had to move back into because I couldn't afford anything else, and some nights I genuinely thought, maybe I am the bad one. Maybe I did make her feel trapped. Maybe I really did want something from her, and I just told myself a nicer story about it. I replayed every single interaction, every late night, every time I'd snapped at her from exhaustion, looking for proof that I was the villain everyone said I was. Then, about 5 months after she died, I was clearing out a box of her things, mostly out of grief. Honestly, not strategy. I just wanted to hold something of hers. And I found her old spiral notebook, the one she used to write grocery lists in. It still smelled faintly like her hand lotion, the lavender kind she kept by the sink. Except the last 20 or so pages weren't grocery lists. They were about Michael and Ashley coming to see her, alone, without me, in the last 6 weeks of her life, sitting on her bed, telling her I was getting tired of taking care of her, telling her I'd said things I never said. One entry, dated about 3 weeks before she died, said, "Michael says she wants to put me in a home and take the money. I don't believe it, but I am so tired and confused today, I don't know who to trust anymore." They'd been lying to a dying woman with dementia to turn her against me, while I was in the next room, making her tea. Once I found that notebook, something in me went very quiet and very still. Not calm. I want to be clear, it wasn't peace. It was something colder than that. I started going back through my phone, and I found something I'd honestly forgotten existed, a handful of voice memos, accidentally recorded. From when I used to just leave my phone running on the kitchen counter to record myself talking through medication schedules, a few of those recordings had picked up Michael and Ashley's visits in the background. You could hear pieces of it. Not everything, but enough. I pulled bank statements showing exactly what I'd spent, down to the dollar, on her medication and care. I got a written statement from her downstairs neighbor, Mrs. Alvarez, who'd seen Michael and Ashley go up alone multiple times in those last weeks and had actually asked me once, confused, why I hadn't been up there with them. When I called her to ask if she'd be willing to write down what she remembered, she didn't hesitate for a second. "Honey, I always wondered why they only came when you weren't there," she said. "I just figured it wasn't my business." I got her medical records, time-stamped, that lined up exactly with the notebook entries. It took me 4 months to put it all together. 4 months of doing this alone, at night, at my kitchen table, the same kind of table where I used to feed her soup. Ashley called a family meeting in September about finalizing things with the inheritance, she said, like it was already settled, like I was just there to nod along. I almost didn't go. I sat in my car outside for probably 20 minutes, both hands on the wheel, telling myself I could still turn around. I didn't turn around. 12 people in that living room. Aunts, uncles, a couple of cousins, Michael, Ashley. I brought a folder. Just one folder, nothing dramatic, no big speech prepared. I sat down, and when Ashley started talking about next steps, I opened it. I need everyone to see something first. I read the notebook entry out loud. The one where Grandma wrote she didn't know who to trust. I watched my aunt's face change. I played 11 seconds of one of the voice memos. Just 11 seconds, Michael's voice telling Grandma I'd been talking about a nursing home. A conversation that never happened. "You lied to a dying woman," I said. "You lied to a woman with dementia, so she'd cut me out while I was in the next room taking care of her." Michael's face went white. Ashley started talking over me, fast, something about how I was twisting it, how I was always the dramatic one. And then my Aunt Carol, who almost never speaks of these things, said one sentence that just stopped the whole room. "Show me the bank statements." I slid them across the coffee table. She put on her reading glasses right there, in silence, while 11 other people just watched her read. Nobody said a word for almost a full minute. My Uncle Ray leaned over her shoulder and read along. "That's her handwriting," Aunt Carol said finally, holding up a photocopy of one of the notebook pages, looking directly at Ashley. "That is Mom's handwriting. Don't you dare tell me this is fake." "This is insane," Michael said, standing up so fast his chair scraped the floor. You're seriously doing this here? In front of everyone?" "Where else was I supposed to do it?" I said. "You made sure I couldn't do it anywhere else." What happened after that wasn't clean. It wasn't a movie moment where everyone hugs and apologizes. Michael and Ashley started turning on each other almost immediately. Ashley saying it was Michael's idea to change the will. Michael saying Ashley was the one who actually sat with Grandma those last weeks. 2 of my cousins got up and left without saying a word to anyone. My Uncle Ray stayed and looked at every piece of paper in that folder, slowly, one at a time, and then just put his hand on my shoulder and didn't say anything at all. Aunt Carol hasn't spoken to Michael since that day. She still calls me every Sunday. My cousin Danielle, who'd been closest with Ashley growing up, sent me a message about 2 weeks later. Just one line. I believed her. I'm sorry I believed her. I didn't know what to say back, so for a long time I didn't say anything. Eventually I just wrote, "Thank you for telling me that. We're not close now, not really, but we're not nothing either." I took it to court. It took another 8 months. Bank records, the neighbor's statement, the notebook, the recordings a forensic document examiner, who confirmed the will had been altered using a version of the estate lawyer's old letterhead template that hadn't been in official use in years. Some detail Michael apparently didn't think anyone would check. Michael's lawyer tried to argue the notebook was inadmissible, unreliable, the ramblings of a woman with dementia. I remember sitting in that courtroom, hands flat on my knees so nobody could see them shaking, listening to a stranger describe my grandmother's fear and confusion as unreliable. My own lawyer stood up and simply said, "The medical records corroborate every date. This isn't rambling, this is a woman describing exactly what was happening to her, in real time." The judge asked to see the timeline laid side by side. It took her about 4 minutes of silent reading to set the papers down. I got my fair share. Not everything. Fair. I'm not going to tell you it fixed anything, because it didn't. I don't talk to Michael anymore. Ashley sent one text, months later. "I hope you're happy." And I didn't respond to that either, because there wasn't anything left to say to it. I sold the apartment I'd moved back into. I used part of what the court awarded me to move to a smaller town about 2 hours away, somewhere quieter, somewhere nobody knew any version of this story. I found a part-time job at a little bookstore, which pays less than what I used to make, and somehow feels like more. The owner, an older guy named Frank, doesn't know any of this. To him, I'm just the new part-timer who's good with the register and reads too fast to keep her own to-read pile in order. There's something almost unbearably peaceful about being known for something that small. I have 2 friends here now, actual friends. One of them, Denise, found out the whole story about 4 months in, sitting on my back porch, and she just said, "That's insane, I'm so sorry," and then asked if I wanted more wine. That was it. No lecture, no twisting it into a life lesson for me to absorb. Some nights, I still think about that spiral notebook, about the version of my grandmother sitting alone in that room, scared and confused, being told lies about the one person who was actually there. I keep it in my nightstand drawer now. I don't read it often. I just know it's there. Sometimes I think about the fact that if I hadn't opened that box when I did, if grief had waited another year to send me looking through her things, I never would have found any of it. I try not to follow that thought too far. I don't know if I forgive them. I don't think that's a question I need to answer for anyone but myself. And most days, I still don't have an answer.